the hell is that? That's the chief.
August 18th meant something a little different to me this year. Especially as we see it tap that trend line that we've been sharing with you, going on almost 600 days since that inauguration high of 109K. Right back here. Coming up on that 600th day as we get ready to watch Uranus station retrograde on that 600th day. But 5 years ago, August 18th, 2021, I was already standing in front of the market trying to explain something that at the time had not happened yet. Bitcoin was roughly around that $44,000 range back in 2021 when I asked if we'd see that $69,000 range that we had been calling for. Obviously the most recognized price of 2021 in that cycle. Everybody remembers the 69K high, right? And the market had not yet printed it 5 years ago yesterday. The headlines had not yet celebrated it. There was no benefit for me calling that range. But I was already talking about it. I was already preparing my students for it. And that's what will always make August 18th so important to me. Last year, August 30th, we prepared you for 126K highs, months before we saw it in October. And so I'm not looking backward at a chart and constructing a story after the fact. I've always been looking forward. And August has been a month where I do that, where I share that. See, 5 years ago, we were studying the market from the devastation of the C19 crash that we had just witnessed, when Bitcoin had collapsed towards that $3,000-$4,000 range. And I was attempting to understand not merely what price had been, but where the mathematical, cyclical, psychological, and astrological structure could potentially take us. And a year of Saturn, that 69 was it. So from roughly 3,000 to 69,000 and approximately a $66,000 increase in the Bitcoin price that year. From the C19 crash to the 69K high, we're looking at 66K roughly difference. An extraordinary expansion, right? From those COVID era lows to the November 2021 cycle peak. And now here we are, possibly getting ready to see that 66K we've been talking about again. Who knows, maybe after 6K lows, 6 month of lows and retesting a 6-year high. It sounds good to me. I've told y'all about this, and maybe that's the part that people sometimes miss is it is easy to look at a historical chart today and say, of course Bitcoin went to 69K. But it wasn't obvious when Bitcoin was sitting at $3,000 and the world was shut down and everybody's in panic mode, running their life off fear. It wasn't obvious then. It wasn't obvious when the market was being crushed with sentiment and dominated with fear like it's been for the last almost year. And now here we are. Why did you do it again, coach? Right back to that 46. Pretty much neutral. It wasn't obvious the last 6 months, but wasn't it though? It wasn't obvious in August of 2021 when Bitcoin was still around $45,000. That 46. And the final move towards that 69K hadn't occurred yet. So on August 18, 2021, Bitcoin closed at approximately $44,801. Thank you very much. From there, we would watch the market continue its advance into price discovery, market expansion, we teach you, eventually reaching that November cycle high. November 10th, the 314th day of the year, pi code, right? I know y'all remember that. And as we hit the 17th this month, did you know it had been 314 days since our high, that pi code. And we start reaching for that trend line, that 17 code energy, right? This year. So here we are 5 years later. Here we are again. And the story keeps getting fascinating. Because the number we're setting at right now, looking to break, is that $66,600 range that we've been teaching you about. That first target that we just couldn't get past a month ago. That 21st, 22nd microstructure reset of July. What do we see this 21st, 22nd microstructure reset of August? Because after roughly 6 months of sideways, frustratingly, seemingly boring price action, Bitcoin is once again confronting a level that carries enormous psychological, numerical, and structural significance. Not to mention astrological importance with what we are entering, that Libra time period, that scales of justice, bull market, bear market, long, short. All I gotta say is follow the thesis or go home. Because to someone who actually watches candles, 6 months of sideways movement can look like nothing, right? But to someone who's studying cycles, compression, market psychology, and historical repetition, however, prolonged sideways movement, however long it takes, to me, it's the exact opposite of nothing. See, as we head into September next month, National Preparedness Month, is preparation. See, it's been accumulation. See, it's been digestion. It's been fasting, right? It's been us building the pressure necessary for the next expansion. At least again, that's what historical data in my thesis has shown for 6 solid years that we've been teaching it. Upwards of a 94% accuracy rate. And that is why this year, August, is hitting so much different than every year before. It's feeling special, that volatility coming in and peaking on that 18th yesterday. It's as if they programmed you into the algorithm, coach. 5 years ago, you were talking about Bitcoin could go to 69K before we saw it. And today we watching Bitcoin once again confront the same level we've been teaching all year long, tied to that 36 code. As you 36 years old, coach. The irony is almost impossible to ignore, pioneers. Back then we were looking up at mountains. Back then I was hot. You know, back then they didn't want me. Now I'm hot, they all on me. Type shit. Mike Jones, right? But today I'm watching the market stand near a level that once represented the catastrophic drop into that 2-6 date we were prepared for. We knew months and months and months ago if we lost 66,600. And we were preaching that before we even got to that range. Back still in 80, 70K. Coming out of those October, November Trump 60-minute interviews, October sell-offs from 123K. And now it's no longer asking, can we reach 66,600 again? We've done that, been done that. Time and time again, and now it's whether we can break through and establish something beyond it. Because that matters. This level matters. Markets have memory, pioneers. That's what I try and teach you. They are living, breathing organisms. And every major historical price becomes some kind of psychological territory. Traders bought here, traders bought there. Traders sold here, traders sold there. Some were trapped here, some were trapped there. Others took profits here, others took profits there. Some waited years to get back in, some waited years to break even. While institutions build positions all around you. So I get it, man. Retail investors, they may remember a number. But the algorithms that we've built recognize the structure. So as we watch Bitcoin approach this old battlefield of 66,600 again, to me it's not simply approaching a number right now this year. It's in the neighborhood of that collective memory we share together. 5 years ago, I was documenting a thesis that eventually carried Bitcoin from the aftermath of one of the most economic shocks of our generation toward a historic $69,000 peak. Now, years later, after another enormous cycle has unfolded, Bitcoin is once again sitting in front of a threshold as we enter Libra. So I'm not interested this year in thinking that history guarantees the future. It doesn't. The historical pattern is not a promise. A cycle is not a crystal ball. And no amount of astrology, numerology, technical analysis, or, historical research that I've done can remove risk from a financial market for me or any of my students. I get that. But what I hope my artwork can do, what I hope the history that I have made can do, is give us a framework for asking ourselves better questions. What happened the last time Bitcoin entered this territory? At this time? Under these circumstances? What was happening underneath the surface before the breakout? Before the breakdown? How long did the market consolidate? Where was liquidity positioned? What did sentiment look like? What did the broader economic environment look like around us? Globally, right? What did the cycles and the seasons suggest? And most importantly, pioneers? What did nobody believe yet? Because that's where my work has always been so meaningful. At least to me. Not in telling people what they already know. Not in drawing a line after the move has already happened, claiming we got it right, eclipse season, right? But setting in uncertainty before the market gives us the answer. That is where the work has been born. The genesis of my everything. 5 years ago, I was a man on a YouTube live stream talking about a destination that had not yet been printed. Today, I can look back at that moment and see the historical significance of having put my thesis, my livelihood, my character and popularity, everything on the line, on a public record, before it all unfolded. And now on August 19th this year, 5 years later, I find myself looking at another historical threshold. The market has changed, Bitcoin has changed, the world has changed, I have changed. My students have come and gone, they've changed. But the same fundamental question remains. Can we recognize the structure before everyone else recognizes the outcome? Because that is what yesterday represented to me. It isn't the anniversary of an old Bitcoin call. It is a reminder of why I started doing this work in the first place. I didn't study markets because I wanted to tell people what happened yesterday. I studied them because I wanted to understand why tomorrow might look different from today. So from the COVID crash near 3K to that climb of 66,000 to that 69K, through disbelief and whatever, where we're about to potentially climb from today. Where we gonna go, coach? The world may never know, but my pioneers will know if you stay tuned. What happens if that 3-6, that 666 code finally breaks? I don't know the future, pioneers. But I do know we've mapped out some very important ranges for you. Straight back to 80K? You know it. But I do know this, man. I've been in this market since 2011. And I've sat and watched Bitcoin set in places where almost nobody believed the next move was possible. And it's always this same rebuttal rhetoric that comes at the extreme fear moments before it gets greedy again. But I've watched hindsight turn uncertainty into inevitability. Okay? And I've learned that the hardest part of this work that I do isn't recognizing the move once everybody else can see it. The hardest part is having conviction to study, document, and communicate the possibility while it is still only a possibility. Okay? And 5 years ago, today was one of those moments for me. And now here we are, time stamping another one, together, as a team, as a tribe. Writing another chapter in the book. Testing another part of the thesis and algorithm that we built. Putting those finishing touches on the canvas and the artwork, right? And so maybe that's the real significance of this anniversary this year, is that we're doing it together. So once again, we're watching. Not because history must repeat itself, but because history left us fingerprints. It left us data. And if we've spent enough time as our crime scene investigative selves studying these fingerprints, then we're able to learn to pay and invest attention to the pattern. And when the market starts to, seem familiar, so I know it's not quite the same as it was in 2021 from 3 to 69K. The numbers have changed. The market has changed. The world has changed. The work continues though. So this year, at this moment, this time, we're not just looking back at history. We're simply standing inside of it. Because we know as Uranus retrograde approaches on September 10th, September 11th, that 9/11, autumn equinox, 9 3/4, wake me up when September ends. Thesis is going to be powerful. So stay tuned for it and don't miss class Friday. Because we'll be preparing for it. That 21st, 22nd, autumn, August countdown is here. Cheers, pioneers.